So I've been playing around with some AI models for the last few weeks, and I wanted to go through which ones I think are the best ones and create some sort of tier list. So S is for the best, A, B, C, D. I don't think anything really kind of fails. All of them still have their own strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, I'll just jump into this one. So going from the first one, GPT Neo. It's actually trained using GPT-2 as base, if I remember correctly. And so GPT Neo is something that was released back in like 2021, so it's not really that relevant these days. But because this is based on the GPT architecture, people are still training on top of it. I'd probably put this in the D tier. Not really that useful, and as far as I know, it has like a few hundred words of context limit. So yeah, Bloom was one of those things that before kind of ChatGPT came around, or I guess exactly when ChatGPT came around, everybody was talking it up as an alternative, but it used something like 80 gigabytes of VRAM, so nobody really could even run it, and nobody really had the chance to like quantize it. That's how you run like most of these open source model these days. So it didn't really go anywhere, and I think the output it gave for the time was good, but afterwards it kind of fell off. But it was not as bad as GPT Neo, I guess, just strictly due to the amount of tokens this was trained on. So I guess this can go in the C tier. Nemo. So this one was trained back like 8 months ago. I'd probably put it around the same way as Bloom. I haven't really tried out that much, but yeah, just the fact that I haven't heard of it means that it's probably not that good. Now RWKV-LM. This is not based on the GPT architecture, so I believe GPT Neo and Nemo are still based on GPT architecture. Maybe Bloom isn't, but from what I know, this one had a really promising kind of feature that set it apart from all these GPT models that are open source or even llama based models. So this, you could train it. Apparently it could have like hundreds of thousands of words of context limit. At the time it was pretty revolutionary. I think it was like 4 months ago that I saw it about it. And it had about, let's say, it wasn't really ChatGPT 3.5 level, but it was kind of alright. But yeah, the project, I don't think it really went anywhere. So I'll put it in the B tier. Maybe I'll put it more down once I go through all these. Now this one, GPT-2B. Now this is something recently released, but I haven't had a chance to play around with it yet. But from what I've heard, it has about the same performance as RWKV-LM. So this is also based on the Nemo, but this was trained with Mo tokens, so I guess this can go in the B tier. Now Dolly 2.0, it was kind of good, not that good at coding tasks, alright at taking instructions, I guess. I don't know if it goes to C tier, but maybe at the end of B tier. Red Pajama, one of the new models that just came out, so maybe around the first of B tier. Not as good as, let's say, GPT-3, but kind of getting there. Now GPT-J is like a lot of the open source models are kind of now based on llama, but GPT-J is just still one of those models that is based on the original GPT architecture, and I think it's trained originally from like the GPT-2 base model, if I remember correctly. But just this name kind of reminds me of GPT-J. It reminds me of the, what's it called, the SCP naming convention, where if it ends with a J, it usually means it's a joke story. It just makes me think every time that this is like a joke model. Apparently it's kind of good. Still, again, it's not as like 3.5 level good, but probably would put it between around here and the B tier. Like better than all these, but not as good as Red Pajama, I think. Now Bert, This is just here because this was one of the original models by Google that I believe was trained on the GPT architecture. Yeah, this was trained back in 2018, and it was trained on quite a lot of parameters, but it was just like at the time it was kind of huge, but it's just now it's like 340 million parameters. Doesn't seem like that much. I think it goes in the B tier. I just included it because it was one of the first uses, I think, of the transformer architecture that Google really didn't go anywhere with. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck happened there. Bard is, as much as people joke about it, is kind of good. But I wouldn't really put it in the A tier just yet. But it's probably better than all these for now. ChatGLM. So this is a model trained by Chinese researchers, if I remember correctly, and it's trained on Chinese text as well as English text. But for my tests, it was pretty good also at English conversations, like as a chatbot. There would just be sometimes it would kind of in the middle of the sentence it would go into Chinese mode, and then yeah. But other than that, I think it was released like back 3 months ago, and at the time it was probably one of the first models to like be open source and kind of challenge 3.5, like GPT 3.5. I don't think any of these models were out at that point, and this was one of the best ones at that time. But now I would say it's probably worse than Dolly. Actually, I'd probably put Dolly ahead a bit and GLM here. So Cohere, that's another model I don't really know that much about. I feel like I've checked it out. It's like one of those GPT, like it's actually backed by an organization. But I don't think it's as good as... maybe it's a bit better than Bard, but I'm not really sure. Bard is probably trained on more data. Oh, okay, maybe it is, because also from what I remember, Bard is not actually the full model that Google has. They have still not released the full model that they have for the fear of, I don't know, AI revolution or some shit. This is just a quantized version, if I remember correctly, with less parameters than the one they actually have. Now we're getting to some of the good stuff. So Koala is a model that was released alongside Vicuna. So Vicuna, let's actually probably go with Vicuna first. So Vicuna is probably the first A tier I'm gonna give. So this is probably one of the best open source model around at this point. This was trained with something like $300. So what they used to train it was text from GPT 3.5, and also I think a little bit of 3, maybe 4 as well. But no, I think they used 4, like GPT 4, to kind of determine, okay, which one is better, like is Llama or Alpaca better than Vicuna? And I think Vicuna came out on top most of the times. So yeah, that's the first A tier for now. I think Koala was another model that released at the same time. Yeah, maybe I'd probably put these on A tier at the end of A tier. Koala is probably worse than Bard. I think Vicuna is still probably the best one. I don't know why exactly they released Koala. I think it was probably trained on the same data set. It's done by the same team, pretty much. So yeah, not really sure about that. Open Assistant isn't really there yet. Yeah, let's just put it behind Koala. Stable LM, yeah, was kind of a joke. So yeah, that just goes straight into D tier. Yeah, it's just not really well tuned. Stable Vicuna. So after Vicuna, there's Stable Vicuna, which is trained on. So Vicuna was just trained on like 3.5, like GPT 3.5 text kind of responses. So just like a lot of question answer prompts using shared GPT. So prompts that people actually shared, and if a person shared it, that would usually mean that they liked it. So Stable Vicuña is built on top of that, so it's also using those human feedback kind of from shared GPT, but also it's using the data set from Open Assistant, and also, if I remember correctly, it's also using Claude Instant, and I think it's also actually even using a little bit of ChatGPT 4 prompts and responses. So that one is the best model, like open source model for now. It can do coding as well, but I think it's probably best with other stuff at the moment. So next up is Llama. So this is kind of a hard one to pick, because while the model itself, I would put like the results from the model itself, I'd put maybe in even the C tier, or maybe at the end of B tier. But just the fact that all the other open source models are based on Llama, and without Llama it would not be possible to have these open source model. Maybe I'll just put it at B. Yeah. Raven, that's another model. I'll probably put it, there's just so many of these models, so yeah, it's kind of good, not as good as Vicuña or Bard, or yeah, I'll just put it there. Flan T4, I think probably end of B tier, something from Google. Yeah, not as good as all the open source models out there. Alpaca, so same as Llama. Vicuña would not be here without Alpaca and Llama combined. So Alpaca was first to do the whole human feedback thing based on the GPT 3.5 responses, but what they did was they just trained it on 3.5 responses, but Vicuña took that a step further and used shared GPT data, so they actually had responses that people liked. So Alpaca, I would say, is kind of worse than Open Assistant, better than Llama still, so yeah, it goes there. GPT for all, this one was a pretty good one. I think both of these were pretty good. Don't know where exactly to put them. Yeah, both of these are open source models, so you can run it on your own PC. So that gets them a point in my book. I think they were for sure better than Alpaca and Koala. I don't know if it was better than Bard. Yeah, let's just put, I think GPT for all was better than Koala, and I think GPT for Alpaca, yeah, maybe it was better than GPT for all, but I don't know if it was better than Bard necessarily. Alright, now we're getting to some of the endgame stuff. So Pygmalion, this is one of the new not safe for work kind of role play model that you can do. Most of the people seem to be using it for that. It's not censored. I mean, actually even with Stable Vicuña, you can kind of trick it to make it think that, oh, this is okay, and you can also, I don't know, like tell it to do some illegal stuff, and it would give you back the response no problem. But yeah, Pygmalion kind of fills in a gap, so you don't really have to do, I don't know, but you have to, with Vicuña you would have to put 100 words to explain how this is all right and that it can give you illegal answers, but with Pygmalion it would just give you that. So it's probably not as good as GPT for all or Koala. Maybe it's better than Open Assistant, so I'll put it here for now at the end of A tier. I don't know if I feel like it probably goes in after Llama. I mean, Llama just for its kind of effect that it had on all the open source models, not really for the actual quality of the responses. Alright, so next up, 3.5. I mean, yeah, it's no really you can't really argue with this. 3.5 is like at the A tier. I think even now all the open source models, they still haven't gotten to to the 3.5 level quality yet. Stable Vicuña is pretty close, but even in terms of, I think in everything else is pretty alright, but in terms of code and still some of the logic stuff, so if you give it riddles or ask it to solve a complex equation or something, it will still struggle. 3.5 might also struggle with some of those more complicated ones, but I think it, in terms of just if you just put them head to head, 3.5 will still come out at top. I mean, ChatGPT 4 just goes in the S tier, no doubt about it. I think everybody knows like nothing right now is coming close to even beating it. It's one of the highest kind of model with the highest number of tokens trained, and then pretty great all around. And also in terms of context length, it's like 8,000. Just to go over some of the other ones, I think Llama is at 2K, ChatGLM is probably 1K, Stable Vicuña is at 2K, 2K words or tokens context limit. ChatGPT 3.5 is at 4.4096 or 4K. Most of these are, I think, 2K. Maybe Bard is at 4K. I'm not exactly sure. Alright, so finally, these two are the new contenders. And compared to, let's say, Cohere, which is, I have not really heard of it. If it was good, I would probably have heard of it more. So Claude Instant, I would say, can probably beat Stable Vicuña still, but it would probably not be able to go against 3.5 at the moment. Just for the fact that it's, even though it's pretty good, it's not there. Like 3.5 just has that, I don't know, like the number of tokens it was trained or something, but it still beats it in terms of coding capabilities at the moment. But Claude has a lot of Claude, first of all, is pretty cheap, so it's something like so Claude has pricing of 1.63 per million tokens, so that's 1.63 per 200k tokens, or actually that's actually already per tokens. So per million, so by 1,000, so it's like 0.00001, something like that. And yeah, completion is 0.0005, so yeah, much cheaper than 3.5. But their process is really annoying. You have to get a whole contract with them. You can't just sign up for Claude, and even after getting on their waitlist, you need to wait some days before you're approved, and then to actually use it in production, you need to like upgrade to. It's a whole mess. I got access to it about a month ago, and I still don't have production access yet. And without production access, basically what you have is like you only have one request at a time. So before your request is done, you cannot send another request basically, or you get a rate limited. Even with, but one good thing is you won't pay anything in the meantime. But then again, they can just block you off at any point if they find you're abusing the system. So finally, it's Claude V1, and this will actually come as a surprise, but I think for sure Claude has beat ChatGPT 3.5. Now, if you don't believe me, what Claude has is 9K context limit. ChatGPT 4 for most of the users, still has 8K context limit, even though they do have one. They do have a model for 32K context limit that is still not available to general public yet. Even if you're on the waitlist, I don't think they even have a waitlist for it yet. And it for sure is definitely better than 3.5 at the moment. So Claude V1, that's this model, and it costs a whole lot more. So that's like 0.32 by 1000 is, so it's 0.03 per 1000 tokens. Or maybe if you do like prompt plus this and then get the average is like 0.02. That's actually the price of GPT-3, not ChatGPT 3.5, but GPT-3. I think it's still the price of it. So yeah, you can basically have better than 3.5 level reasoning and everything for 0.02 per 1000 tokens. So that's pretty good, I'd say. So yeah, this is the final tier list. I think I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, this one turned out to be a joke. Maybe not as big as a joke as GPT Neo or Birds, I guess. They still kind of did something there. But other than that, I think I'm pretty happy with this. There's nothing, I mean, on the S tier, there's still only ChatGPT 4. Maybe Claude can get there in a few months' time if there's no big improvements to GPT 4, because AI does move really fast. Or I think probably the best chance at dethroning 3.5 other than Claude V1 is probably Stable Vicuña, maybe in a few months or up to a year. It should definitely be better than 3.5. I would be disappointed if not. Or maybe some other new model will come up which will be trained on let's say even GPT-4 data. Maybe some guy has just money to burn and he'll just burn money getting prompt response pairs from GPT-4 and just trains another model based on it. Because we've seen that it doesn't really cost that much to train the model itself, even with the GPU cost being so high to rent. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think of the new AI content, and see you in the next video.